What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? Hello, everybody. I'm your man, Dr. L. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I truly, truly appreciate it. Let me adjust my camera here. Excuse me, my lighting. Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. Let's make it do what it do. Let's make sure we grow the channel. If you are not a sub, consider subscribing to the channel. Make sure that you do subscribe to the channel, and let's make it grow. Right? There's a lot going on in the world, and I want to make sure that I can get to all of these different topics and subjects. I am not a lawyer, but we are going to be breaking down the Diddy trial for today. Again, as I said, there's a lot going on in the world. We got a lot of news going on with the big, beautiful bill that we got going on here. And we also have some news and information about something I was watching. Trump is making, or the president is making some type of big announcement. You know, we got situations going on in Ukraine, situations going on in the Middle East, and I want to try to cover those things because those things interest me. They're not my wheelhouse. My wheelhouse is criminal justice, and my PhD is in leadership. And I also do a little bit of forensic psychology, which is my master's degree. However, but I do want to cover a lot of things that are going on in the world, because I think that we ought to know what's going on in the world that we live in and the world that you and I are paying taxes to be a part of, right? All right, so let's get into what happened in the Diddy trial. There was we understand that he was just acquitted of 3 of the 5 charges. So let's go over to the indictment that I have here. Let's do a present screen share here. Let's go over to the indictment and let's take a look at this, right? So this is the indictment here at the stage. Okay. This is the indictment here. I don't want to review the summary. This is the United States of America versus Sean Combs. Now, let me just kind of give a little bit of background information to this, right? Right. So as a former law enforcement officer, right? So I was never a federal officer. So if you don't know, there's federal charges, federal officers. Those would be the FBI, Border Patrol, or ICE, things like that, right? So they have their own statutes. Each state will have their own statutes. And in those states, you have state troopers or state police. Then you would have city police officers. Some places you're going to have counties, all that. So all those are different entities which enforce the law. Now we can have a longer, better conversation about, you know, the legal system as it is and how it operates and all that. We can get into that another time. But I wanted to kind of talk about what's going on here with this Diddy trial and why I think that this was a bad situation for the prosecutors. I was never on their side, never thought they were going to be able to do and get the charges passed through or find him guilty on these charges. And I'll discuss that in a while. So as I start to break down the differences between the federal, the state, and the federal and state laws, and sometimes counties, right? In the state that I live in, there is a county system, but we don't have county police officers or sheriff's deputies, at least those who drive the streets and enforce laws, make arrests and things along those lines. Our deputies and sheriffs do a different job, but that's for another time. Connecticut seems to be pretty rare when it comes to that type of situation. All right, so make sure you hit the like button if you're here in the building. I do appreciate it. So Sean Combs was arrested on 5 charges of racketeering or RICO charges and sex trafficking and engagement in prostitution. all of this was, in my estimation, just absolute nonsense. Just absolute, absolute nonsense. And I was very disappointed to see that how this went down. That to see that this was an issue. So RICO charges are federal charges where the government is trying to tie an enterprise into uh, trying to prove that that an enterprise or a business is a front for illegal criminal activity. In other words, if you look at, quote unquote, the mob, um, and by the way, that's not just pejorative towards certain ethnicities, but if you look at any type of situation like that, where there's a family or a creation of some type of legal enterprise, and they start what they would do is they will hide their nefarious deeds or criminal deeds behind something that's positive, right? So in other words, that would be like that would be like that's where we get the term laundering money from. Where are we laundering money, right? So how are we doing that, right? So because you launder money, you try to clean up money because you have dirty money, selling drugs, selling weapons, things along those lines. And then next thing you know, you try to make sure you try to hide it from the government by saying that it's really some type of clean money, right? Laundering money, right? So you buy a laundromat or something like that. All right, so they tried to get Sean Combs on one count of racketeering, saying that he was running a criminal enterprise. The criminal enterprise that they claimed that this man was running, the criminal enterprise that they claimed that this man was running was a sex trafficking ring of kidnapping people, holding them against their will. And where's the money coming in from this? And the enterprise that they say that he was hiding this drug trafficking, human trafficking enterprise behind was his bottle company selling liquor, his uh enterprise of um what else would he have? His clothing line, his music. Well, I mean, that's just absolute nonsense. And so why these people were so gung ho about presenting this as an idea is just something I just couldn't understand, right? So that's what we have going on here. So let's get into why I think that this was such a big mistake. I think one of the biggest problems that the prosecution had in their analysis and in their prosecution of this was their star witness Cassie. Now it was difficult for all of us as um, pedestrians as we were, right? Because we didn't have access to watch the actual trial. We had to rely on reporters or those who were inside the courtroom tweeting or connecting to the outside somehow about what was going on, what was being said, and all that. So that was a difficult task for the prosecution, for us to understand what was going on. It was also a difficult task for the prosecution to prove their case, particularly because Cassie, I think, was just a terrible witness, right? I know that she tried to gain sympathy because she was pregnant. I know that she tried to gain sympathy because she was on the stand, yes, being pregnant, crying on the stand, and things like that. But the problem was that she said that she had participated in and was a willing participant in many of these quote unquote freak offs, right? If you're not familiar with that case. So why was this woman who was the star witness allowed to go up there and say what she said? And I think that they were trying to ride the wave. This is just my opinion. I'm not a legal expert as far as the law, but I was obviously a police officer. So and I understand you have to prove certain types of elements, and I also understand from my experience and training and all that certain witnesses will make better will make a better witness on the stand because of their ability to cry, their ability to connect with the jury. And that's what I just don't think happened in this particular case. Here was Cassie, a star in and of herself, or trying to be a star, on the stand. Yes, she had some emotional issues, or she had some alcohol and drug addictions and things along those lines, but I just don't think that she was able to connect with the jury in this particular case. So as we look at this case, right? So we understand that he was charged with, again, with racketeering, 2 counts of sex trafficking. Sex trafficking is when you hold people against their will. It may entail violence and it may not. There, I think at the core of it, um, there is an inherent threat of violence, either against you or against your family. A lot of times, who become involved in sex trafficking, or those who are sex trafficked, I should say, are those who have family debts, come from low income communities, are lack of very strong family units, again, poverty, of debts. Think there's a range of ideas and range of problems that cause someone to become indebted to someone else, and the only way that they feel as if they can pay that debt is through sex trafficking or human trafficking, or becoming a work traffic, right? So sometimes in some places, right, people are taken off the street, kidnapped, etc., and then they are placed into mines or into very dangerous jobs, sweatshops sometimes, in order to pay off debts, or in order to just get something done. So this is what they were claiming that Sean Combs was doing, that he had somehow tricked these individuals in with the threat of force to do what they were doing. The problem with the particular case is that the people often testified that they were getting something to eat. Cassie, in her particular case, was had gone to rehab a couple of times, called them on the phone, text messages, come over here, this, that, and the other. So I think that was problematic. He was found guilty of 2 counts to engage in prostitution, or particularly across state lines. Again, these aren't, in my estimation, large problems or complaints. Certainly illegal. Certainly, I'm not justifying prostitution. I'm not saying it shouldn't be illegal. I'm not saying whether I'm pro or con for that. That's a conversation for another day. There are certainly a lot of advocate groups who are advocating for the complete legalization of prostitution, because it is a way in particular for women, to take control of their lives, not be sex trafficked, keep 100% of the profits that they're getting. But that's a conversation for another day. So this is what they were trying to say, that Sean P. Diddy Combs was being held, was doing, and he was guilty of. Again, the jury bought that particular argument. The jury bought the argument that he had engaged in prostitution. In other words, he had called. If you read or watched any of this, he would call people up, or he would have Cassie call, say, bring this prostitute in, bring this sex worker in. We're in New York, get this guy from New Jersey, get this guy from Massachusetts, wherever he's getting them from, right? Bring him over here, and we're going to engage in these freak-offs for a long period of time. Now, okay, I can actually see that, but what I can't give them is the conviction for racketeering, because if Sean Combs had engaged in racketeering, it would have had to have been a criminal enterprise of great magnitude. And where are the other arrests if he was held in this particular case? If he was in this particular case, he's got all this big menage of individuals who are involved in this sex trafficking, kidnapping, racketeering kind of outfit enterprise. Where are the rest of the people who have been arrested? Again, sex trafficking. Of all these people, who else is being arrested with this? If Cassie, who is making phone calls and text messages and setting this up, why was she not arrested as well? All of this is problematic. He was just found guilty of 2 counts of engaging in prostitution. Is she going to be arrested because she was on the stand saying she had done some of these things, right? All very problematic, in particular from a male point of view. We're going to keep holding men accountable when women are claiming to be damsels in distress. And in this day and in this time, we are seeing more and more people who are, particularly for ladies, who are engaging in conduct and saying that they are bosses, that they're moving up, that they're more educated. And all of this is true. All of this is true. But you can't continue to say, well, there's a big bad man who's holding me hostage and holding me captive. You can't continue to say that type of thing, right? So those are the problems that we have with that. So what I wanted to do is show a video or two, right? I wanted to show a video or two. Let's see. I want to show a video or two about some people's reactions to this. And here is Megyn Kelly. Megyn Kelly herself, I'm going to show a special here. Megyn Kelly is not happy with the verdict. And we're going to listen to this. I have not watched this, but I want to listen to this because Megyn Kelly, who worked at Fox News, and Fox News was notorious for having, sexual allegations, all kind of crazy stuff like that going on. So let's listen to breaking points as they break this down, and furious about this particular case that happened.
Is not walking out of the courthouse a free man, but he thought he might for a second. Mm-hmm. So he was acquitted. We could put this first element up on the screen. He was acquitted on the most serious charges, the racketeering charge and the sex trafficking charges. But he did get found guilty on 2 counts of transporting prostitutes. He did not get hit with any domestic violence charges because they were outside the statute of limitations.
Yeah.
Right? And so Diddy collapsed to the floor and praying. Do we have that? Do we have that image of him like praying
there
on his seat there? Yeah. He thanked to the jurors, and then it did seem like he felt like he was about to get out, and the judge said no.
Yep.
Interestingly, cited the domestic violence that was in the case as a reason why she was not giving bail before sentencing. Or
they tend to throw domestic violence into a lot of particular cases. Again, we saw that video, and they were going to use the domestic violence as threats and intimidations, etc., to try to bolster the racketeering and other charges. Sex trafficking, as I mentioned, sex trafficking also can be tied to violence.
She or he? The judge.
The judge.
I didn't watch enough of the case. Which is interesting because clearly he was guilty. It's on video, but he was not tried for it.
Right.
So it's this gray area where bail and accusations can have an interplay.
Right. So he wasn't charged with it, so it shouldn't have been brought up unless you're going to directly tie it to the other emotional, psychological abuse that goes along with sex trafficking. So unless you're going to throw that in there, that's going to be problematic.
Leads to you being behind bars. But clearly the jury felt that it was not a conspiracy.
Right.
And what Diddy had argued, or Diddy's lawyers had argued, is that yes, there was a plan to have these freak-offs.
Yep. And
they were organized. And in that sense, there was a conspiracy because he would tell, hey, you do the drugs, you do the baby oil, you bring the women.
Yep.
And he had an overarching kind of leverage campaign that he would use with women, where some would be getting $10,000 a month in child support, others would.
And all that is supposed to be proof that he was running a criminal organization. Meanwhile, that's just regular routine, child support and et cetera, et cetera. Again, I'm not in favor of saying that one person or one particular group of people can be guilty of something when everyone else runs scot-free. But let's fast forward to the part where I want to hear what Megyn Kelly is going on about.
And I want to say he was acquitted of that, actually. Let's take a listen to Megyn Kelly's reaction. Followed the case very closely and had some legal experts on when the news came down. We'll go ahead and take a look at this next clip.
Combs shook his head vigorously and put his hands together in prayer. Oh, it's all just so chummy inside the courtroom for this disgusting pervert female abuser who I can't believe is about to roam our streets again. I'm sorry, guys.
Again, this lady worked for Fox News. You can look at all the different lawsuits that were going on in Fox News, but this guy is disgusting and a pervert. So again, they tried to hurt this man in the court of public opinion, which was the biggest problem.
I'm disgusted by this verdict. This is fucking ridiculous. I just find it absolutely outrageous, the amount of crime that this guy just got away with. I believe he committed arson. He definitely battered Cassie. He battered Jane too. The statute of limitations for battery in Los Angeles, California is 1 year. 1 year. So if they didn't charge him for battery within 1 year, and they couldn't because he bought the tape and it remained hidden thanks to those security guards out there, then they could never charge him with that again. There's no question. He dragged her back into that hotel room. Why wasn't that kidnapping? They only talked about the kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, who was his sort of main assistant, because she said he grabbed her and made her go with him over to Kid Cudi's house. There's no question he broke into Kid Cudi's house, in my view, and that he opened up the Christmas presents and locked the door in and made a threat. There's no question in my mind he was behind the arson of Kid Cudi's car, and there was proof, plenty of proof to prove that. There was female fingerprints they found on that, the firebomb that was left there, the Molotov cocktail. And the prosecution said there's no question he didn't do it himself, but he said, I'm going to bomb Kid Cudi's car. It's in writing. Cassie Ventura emailed her mother saying, oh my God, he's threatening to bomb his car. And 2 weeks later, it got bombed. Oh, gee, it was just some third party who also had, it's just like the proof was there. Well, the beatings, the threats that if they didn't go back into those rooms and get off with these male escorts, that they were going to get beaten. The testimony from that Daniel Phillip, who was the male.
So she's kind of going off here, and I'm not saying that any of this is crazy. I'm just saying that they didn't prove their point. They didn't prove all this to the jury's satisfaction. That's the part that we got to understand, is that we can be outraged in a court of public opinion, but the court, the things that we are seeing and reading and hearing could be and probably are vastly different from what the jury was hearing. Because remember, we weren't allowed to see everything that was read and what was going on. There's times when people are excused. There's some evidence that they could not consider. So there was things that were going on, and Megyn Kelly knows this, right? She would know this far better than I. She was a lawyer, so these things are things that why he was not convicted. He just convicted. He was just the prosecution simply didn't prove their case to the jury. That's all. That's what it came down to. Convicting him in the court of public opinion, being outraged by the alleged conduct. And I'm not saying it's okay to threaten people or bomb people's cars or anything like that. I definitely agree. He's probably a bad man. The problem is that they didn't prove this to the 12 members on the jury. That's the problem.
Escort who heard Combs abusing Cassie behind the door, and she was screaming, I'm sorry, as he heard him slapping her. Get back out there. She came back out. She was shaking. She got back into the escort's lap, physically shaking. She was so scared to the point where that guy couldn't perform sexually because this was so horrifying to him. What in the actual F went on in there?
Yeah, so I feel like that's probably the general public's reaction. It's just baffling. And it seems, Ryan, like the prosecution in that clip, at least one of the legal experts goes on to kind of blame the jury. But I would think that the onus for the failure here has to lie with the prosecution.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's very hard to lose a federal case.
Yeah.
Like, it's like their conviction rate is absolutely through the roof. And so, yeah, they clearly own the blame for this. We didn't cover this trial a whole bunch, but whenever we did, and I would look into it, I remember, I would think,
again, I just think that Cassie was just a bad witness. I understand all that. It sounds outrageous. It does sound outrageous. However, the problem is that the prosecution simply just didn't do their job to any satisfaction to the jury. And again, what evidence could they consider? They can't consider. They were probably told they could not consider the dragging back in, all these different videos in all this alleged evidence and all this. Oh, did he bomb the car? We don't know. So you can't consider that. All they can do is what you can prove, right? There's that old saying, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. His car probably was bombed. It probably was emailed, but circumstantial evidence doesn't necessarily mean it's a definitive connection. And Kelly should know that.
Like, they're really leaning into the emotional aspect of this. How poorly he treated Cassie and these other women, and how just what an absolutely repulsive lifestyle he was leading, using violence and emotional manipulation to pull these multi-day freak-offs off. But I remember thinking every time, like, but what are the crimes here?
Right.
The Cassie one was obvious.
Right. What are the crimes? I mean, right. Once you get past the emotional outrage that we all have, what are the crimes here? Was he arrested for bombing Kid Cudi's car? Was he arrested for anything else? What is it that they can prove that was illegal statutorily according to the federal statutes? That's the problem.
Yes,
the violence.
Yeah.
But then that's out of the statute of limitations.
Right.
The drugs, no charge.
Right.
Prostitution, convicted. But beyond that, where's and trafficking is an interesting concept and charge. It's
it's interesting way to get
you pay someone, if you pay a prostitute, get in a car.
Yeah.
And then go to a hotel for a freak off. Did you traffic them there?
Right. And it's
what does that mean?
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a really good point. And so I guess partially another thing is it's not that it was...
The jury was like, that's not trafficking. That's paying a prostitute.
And it's not necessarily easy for the prosecution then to build a case based on... And I think a lot of it also is him. So he's alleged to have drugged people many, many times.
Which would be a crime. They didn't charge that.
Right. And I think because it looks like...
Well, was he providing drugs or was he actually drugging people? That's what you got to prove.
They were overconfident, started bundling things into the RICO case, thinking that they had him the rights on racketeering because they
he clearly conspired to organize these freak offs, but the jury was like, not really illegal.
Right.
Except that most of the pieces within it are actually illegal.
Yeah, right. Within it. Yes. Yeah. And so, we were just looking up his criminal history. He has been charged many, many times.
He never got charged for the 9 people dying. He should have been charged with some type of negligence there.
All right. So I'm going to leave it up there. So let me know your thoughts, your opinions. I just want to kind of go down through that because, again, I think it's very, very telling and very important to understand, what happened and why Sean was not convicted. And the problem, again, was the prosecution just couldn't prove their case. Put all the outrage aside. Put all of the however you feel about it aside. Put all that aside and just ask yourself, did the prosecution actually prove crimes? I mean, organized, making phone calls and telling people where to be and when, and even sometimes providing them with the means to get there and providing them some type, food, drink, baby oil, and drugs. If you're not gonna charge them with the drugs, all this becomes problematic. So let me know your thoughts and your opinions. Hit me in the comment section. Much love and peace. If there's a story you want me to break down or talk about, or if you have any videos you want me to break down, send them to me. Hit me an email. Much love and peace.